Good to have you with us on this Monday edition, Ed Schultz News and Commentary. The president-elect, just hours away from the inauguration process and becoming the president of the United States this Friday, decides to pick a Twitter fight with a civil rights icon in Congressman John Lewis. What a mistake. Here's tweet number one. Now, Lewis is part of the loyal opposition, so to speak, okay? He says he can't work with Trump. He says that he's not sure that Trump's the legitimate president of the United States. It's political talk. So Trump now is in a position where he sees apparently that he has to respond to everything. So tweet number one in this spat is Congressman John Lewis should spend more time on fixing and helping his district, which is in horrible shape and falling apart, not to mention crime infested. That's the second tweet. Rather than falsely complaining about the election results. All talk, 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 no action, no results, sad, exclamation point. The third tweet from Trump. Congressman John Lewis should finally focus on the burning and crime-infested inner cities of the United States. I can use all the help I can get. Well, John Lewis responding, the African-American community responding, Congress responding. Many Democrats are going to boycott the inauguration. Lewis saying that he doesn't think there's any way he could work with Donald Trump. So whereas Trump said on the night that he was elected that we got to come together, this is the big divide early on before he is sworn into office. I think this may be his biggest mistake so far. This sets the table for obstruction. This sets the table for the filibuster in the Senate. And now you've got 20 million people who are hanging in the balance as to what's going to happen when it comes to health care in this country now that they're repealing the Affordable Care Act. And now Trump comes out with a story saying that he wants insurance for everybody. Well, that's not where the Republicans are. So before he even goes into office, he's picked a civil rights fight. He has picked a fight with the Republicans. He's picked a fight with the media. And I think this is just time for all of us to put on our seatbelts. And oh, by the way, he's picked a fight with the intelligence community. And oh, by the way, I'm sick and tired of reading on Facebook about how I'm some kind of a traitor or turncoat because I read the news on RT. Watch the news on RT, okay? Because I write a lot of it. During an interview with Fox News Sunday, outgoing CIA Chief John Brennan says he doesn't think that Trump has a full appreciation of Russian capabilities.
I don't think he has a full appreciation of Russian capabilities, Russians' intentions, and actions that they are undertaking in many parts of the world. And that's what the obligation and responsibility of the intelligence community is. I very much hope that our relationship with Russia improves in the coming administration. I think he has to be mindful that he does not yet, I think, have a full appreciation, understanding of what the implications are of going down that road, as well as making sure he understands what Russia is doing.
Well, I'm sure that Donald Trump is going to get his people in there and figure it out somehow. The outgoing intel people have decided to lower the boom on the president-elect. I'm no more a Trump fan than anybody else out there when it comes to the liberal community. But I don't want to see the president of the United States fail. Do you? I mean, beating him at the ballot box is the name of the game, and doing what you have to do to make sure that policies get through for the good of the people is what everybody ought to be advocating for. But failure of a president, I didn't want Bush to fail. I didn't want Reagan to fail. I want America to succeed. And there's ways of winning things over and winning issues over by doing it by being a loyal opposition. All right. So the intel community drops this dossier that is unsubstantiated, but it's in the briefing. When Obama saw it, he said, what does this have to do with anything? Has something to do with alleged activities of deplorable behavior when Trump was over in Russia. And so now here's Brennan pissed off at Trump because he's going after the intel community based on an unsubstantiated report, which Trump talked about and called out CNN at his press conference.
I think, as the Director of National Intelligence said in his statement, this is information that's been out there circulating for many months. So it's not a question of the intelligence community leaking or releasing this information. It was already out there. It is unsubstantiated reporting that is out there.
Wait a minute. Wait a second. It's information that was out there, Mr. Brennan. Yes, that's true. But it never entered the mainstream media until the intelligence community put it in a daily briefing for the President of the United States. There's a huge difference between having some website throw some crap out about somebody and then, oh, by the way, the intelligence community decides to put it in a dossier and hand it to the President of the United States. I mean, it would seem to me that all of us as Americans would want the intelligence community to give the President of the United States some concrete information about what the heck's going on or what's happening and be able to back up everything they put on there so we don't go in the wrong direction. This was smear. This was an attempt to smear the president-elect, whether you like him or not. And of course, Trump tweeted out, "What is this Nazi Germany?" So here's the rest of the cut of Brennan's answer.
Reporting that is out there that has been circulating in the private sector and with the media as well by a firm that pulled this information together. But what I do find outrageous is equating an intelligence community with Nazi Germany. I do take great umbrage at that, and there is no basis for Mr. Trump to point fingers at the intelligence community for leaking information that was already available publicly.
So, I guess that's the way they want to do intelligence now. Let's just get some tabloid shit and throw it at the President of the United States and also the President-elect, and let's just throw all kinds of supermarket tabloid crap in, and we'll call it intelligence, and then when they get ripped for doing, they say, well, that's not the intel community. It just doesn't make any sense at all. It's time for Brennan to move on. Now, I want to point out that in this intelligence briefing that was delivered a week ago Friday, in it was a 7-page section on Russian television and how we, of course, were so instrumental in affecting this election. So they go fast forward now to the Senate Intelligence Committee, and Senator Blunt from Missouri asks the Director of National Intelligence exactly, okay, what kind of audience does RT have? I mean, can I go watch him? That's exactly what he said. That's what Blunt said. Blunt asked the question, can I watch him? Can I go see him? And the Director Clapper of National Intelligence says, well, I think they're on in here. I don't know. I don't know what their penetration is. I think they're on, but they're around. Go back and check that out, folks, that exchange. So then Angus King, the independent senator, he says, well, actually, I've got some figures here. RT has got 850 million YouTube subscribers, and CNN's only got about 200 million. They're way down compared to these guys, so they do have quite the penetration. Now, think about this. We've got the Director of National Intelligence doing 7 pages in this intel report on the Russian hacking, that RT was a part of it. RT has been so influential in this election, but they can't tell the Senate Intel Committee exactly where the hell you can watch it, or exactly what their exposure is, or how many likes they get, or how many views they get. That's the level of the intelligence briefing that the President of the United States is getting with these old-time jokers? No wonder we're not getting along with superpowers, with these jokers running the game. When we come back, Bob Shrum, Democratic strategist, here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Stay with us.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania, to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns. It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor. They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up, and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.
Good to have you back on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Bob Shrum, Democratic Strategist, Professor at USC, joins us. Bob, good to have you with us. Appreciate your time.
Well, glad to be here.
3 stories we have focused on. Number one, this unexpected dust-up and insult back and forth with civil rights icon Congressman Lewis and Donald Trump, of course. Also what CIA Chief John Brennan has said about Trump and dealing with the Russians. And also the media flap that apparently is going back and forth, how Trump is going to actually deal with White House correspondents. You've been down this road and seen it so many times before. Why do I have this gut feeling, and I said a moment ago, that this may be Trump's first and most important mistake so far, doing a back and forth with John Lewis. This is so uncharacteristic in a transition time or for any president-elect or president for that matter. Your thoughts on this and how do they correct it?
Well, we haven't seen it all before. We haven't seen anything like this before. People have been critical of presidents in the past, and most presidents don't rise to debate. Donald Trump apparently thinks that he has to insult anyone who disagrees with him. In this case, he not only insulted a civil rights hero who spilled blood to make this a better society, he insulted the city of Atlanta. It's really quite extraordinary, and you end up with a headline in the main Atlanta newspaper that says Trump is wrong. But I'm beginning to think that it's a mistake, all right, but I'm beginning to think it's part of the pattern. I mean, this morning he went after Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany. He made disparaging remarks about NATO. He said he could probably lift the sanctions on Russia if we could do a nuclear arms deal. The sanctions have nothing to do with nuclear arms. They have everything to do with the occupation of Crimea and Russian infiltration into Ukraine. I just think he is going to do what he wants to do. And I suspect the people around him, whether it's General Mattis, the new defense secretary, Rex Tillerson, the new Secretary of State, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, all those people who might try to calm him down are probably going to have a very hard time doing it. There's a wonderful line in All About Eve where Betty Davis says, "Buckle your seatbelts, it's going to be a bumpy ride." Well, it's going to be a bumpy ride.
The 2 gentlemen you mentioned, General Mattis and also Rex Tillerson, aside from their politics or their background is success. I mean, these are high-powered people, whether you agree with them or not. Successful in the executive world of the energy business, and Tillerson and General Mattis and what he has accomplished in the military. These aren't stupid people. And I'm curious as to if they're going to stay on and stay connected to this almost unhinged pattern of pushback that is so, not presidential as we have known as American citizens. That are they going to buy into this and just say, well, that's what the boss does, and I'm going to be in this environment? I
think they're going to try to moderate it. I don't know that they'll succeed. Every sign so far is that Trump is just going to be Trump and that you can't stop him. But they're going to have to try because there's too much at stake. You have General Mattis saying we need to hold to the agreement with Iran at this point and enforce it. And I think there's a lot of logic in that position. Even some of the opponents of the deal now say we ought to hold to it. But Trump may just decide to tear it up. Mm-hmm. At that point, what Mattis would do, I have no idea. Health
care. Following this is like a jigsaw puzzle for the Republicans. first to repeal, then to replace. They don't know what to replace. Then you have the president-elect saying that they're going to have insurance for everybody. Well, the last time I checked, that was universal health care. But wait a minute, they don't want that. What's going on with health care, other than the fact that they want to butcher what's on the table?
Well, Trump says his plan is almost ready, that he wants insurance for everybody, but he doesn't want single payer. So it will be a kind of miraculous plan when we see it, because it's very hard to do what he's saying without doing some form of single payer. So I just think we're going to go through a period here on health care where sensible people like Lamar Alexander, the senator from Tennessee, who's head of the health committee, is going to say that we have to do this very gradually. We have to make sure people don't lose coverage. We have to protect people with pre-existing conditions. That's very complicated. And Trump wants this done right away. I don't see how that can happen.
Bob, what's the first 100 days going to look like?
Boy, I don't know. Nightmare on Elm Street is one possibility. Another possibility is that Trump could surprise us. I'm not betting on this, but given the lead up to the inauguration, he could actually give a speech that reaches out. He's obviously going to change some policies. He's obviously going to cut taxes drastically, especially for people at the top. But he could try, I think, to become a less combative president and a more unifying president. I just don't know if that's in his nature. His nature is to fight all the time with everybody to gain whatever advantage he can. Mm-hmm. That's not how you lead as President of the United States.
Well, if he is going to really cut the top income bracket from 39 to 33%, there's going to have to be some pretty drastic spending cuts if the same amount of dollars are going to come into the Treasury. Although he says his health care plan is not going to mess with Medicare and Medicaid, I don't know how this pencils out.
Well, it doesn't really. I mean, look, he's headed for either surrender to or conflict with Paul Ryan, to privatize Medicare, fool around with Social Security, block grant Medicaid, all things which Trump promised his constituency he would not do. Mm-hmm. So he's either going to surrender on that, become a kind of conventional Republican president. Bush tried to do some of these things, and I think he'd have a very hard time passing them. But the budget resolution that they passed actually contemplates a $9 trillion increase in the national debt over the next 10 years. That's how Reagan did what he did in the 1980s.
Yeah.
We never came close to a balanced budget. We had massive deficits, massive tax cuts, massive increases in defense spending. And I think we may very well see that under this president as well. We just don't know. Most of the time, when you're headed into a presidential inauguration, you have a pretty good idea of what the highest priorities of the next president are and what he's going to do. I mean, we knew in 2009 Obama's first priority was going to be to deal with the global financial crisis. We knew that his second priority was almost certainly going to be health care, and that his other priority was going to be financial reform. That was very clear to us. George W. Bush, pre-9/11, we knew going in that his first priorities were going to be tax cuts and education reform. Now, we know that Trump's going to do tax cuts, but beyond that, I don't think we know very clearly where he's going to take the country, either in terms of substance or tone.
Tax cuts are the easiest thing to get done in Washington, and going from 39 to 33% is going to get a lot of support, especially in the Senate, and Ryan will bring the House along. That could happen pretty fast, probably faster than anything happening on Obamacare. Bob Shrum, always great to visit. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Ed.
You
Take
bet.
care.
Democratic Strategist, Professor at USC. The Republicans have said for years that they were going to get rid of Obamacare, but we need to look at this in that the Democrats had their chance. When you look at the fight for health care and the changes that have taken place. I remember interviewing Ted Kennedy one time, and he was telling me that everything has to happen in terms of a generation. What can this generation accomplish? What can the next generation set up to accomplish? And what are the goals? One thing the Republicans have always had in the conservative movement, they've always had a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and a 25-year plan. And when they get power, they know what to do with it. This should come as no surprise that health care is being repealed the same way it was passed, through reconciliation and the budgetary process, and they're going to piecemeal get rid of it. But when the Democrats had power, they always want to sit around and just negotiate with people. The Democrats had 60 votes in the Senate, but the conservative Democrats of the world would not come on board and go the route of the public option. And so we ended up with the Affordable Care Act, with exchanges that were optional and not government mandated. And whereas there are some good things in the Affordable Care Act, which is Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, the fact is that it is vulnerable if it's not set up by every state. And exchanges did not unfold in every state because there was Republican resistance to it all. So here's where we are. Look back and understand that when the Democrats had the opportunity, they didn't do what the Republicans traditionally do. When Republicans have power, they know what to do with it. They do what they do. They get things through, and they get their caucus together, and they make everybody get on board. The Democrats get power, and it's very seldom in a generation you're going to see 60 seats in the Senate, which was the case back in 2009 after Al Franken beat Norm Coleman in Minnesota in a long, drawn-out process. From June of 2009 until November of 2010, there was this opportunity that this country was fighting over health care, and the Democrats could not get their caucus together, and we didn't get the public option. We didn't get mandates in every state to set up competition, and now it's starting to unravel because of it. So I hope that every liberal out there takes mention and takes rhyme and reason as to what exactly happened. When you get the power, you got to use it. And this is what's frightful right now, because the Republicans have got the White House, the House, and the Senate. They're going to get what they want. Ideologically, they're going to get what they want. Ed Schultz, News and Commentary. We're back tomorrow.